Black folks, now that the whole Kyrie Irving situation has kind of blown over, you want to know what that actually was about? Well, see, in the state of New York, there were a bunch of people who were laid off because they didn't get a certain jab. Remember that? Well, there were some court rulings that said that all those people can return back to work with back pay. Kyrie Irving wasn't allowed to play for a while, and that cost him a lot of money. Do you think that it's a coincidence that there's a correlation between him being accused of all this stuff that even Adam Silver, who's a Jewish person, says is not true? He's not anti-Semitic, and certain people not wanting to pay him. Perhaps that's why the Brooklyn Nets went in as hard as they did. Because if you owe somebody that amount of money, you wouldn't do it too? Oh, oh, oh. Hey, black folks, now that the whole Kyrie
put a whole nother spin on this situation with Kyrie. I was looking at a video earlier. My wife was showing me about I think it was his first game back, and you had IUIC out there protesting on his behalf, and they mentioned it to him, and he didn't even acknowledge it. And so this sort of echoes, in the beginning when I said that it's good to stand firm on the notions and the things that's being said, and not necessarily the individuals. We should always stand on the truth, but we see that there's a whole nother plot twist behind this. There's a law in New York, labor laws in New York that's being broken. And even the time that he was laid off during the pandemic, when everybody was persuaded and forced to do the what, he set out then during that time. That was more so voluntarily on his part also. But they also they made it to where he couldn't play in certain places, if he didn't do that. But just another perspective on the issue. A lot of people are upset with him because he apologized. But that's one way of looking at it if you want to see it that way. Another way you can look at it is he served a purpose. It's been many waves of this awakening dating back, to the Most High knows how long. But this is just another wave in the awakening. Some people were able to wake up and see the truth, and others just, like always, they just missed out on it. But I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to our Heavenly Father, to His Son, and to His Holy Spirit. I want to say shalom and blessings to everybody. This is the book of 2nd Maccabees-Pt.1. We did 1st Maccabees. And what I want to do real quick, I want to share my screen. We're going to revisit some of 1st Maccabees just to get some backdrop. If you didn't get the readings of 1st Maccabees, go back and check that out. But basically, you see that Mattathiu, he rose up during a time when our people started to be afflicted. It was troublous times for our people. A lot of our people were forced to turn on their heritage. A lot of our people sacrificed their lives as a means of not giving up the heritage. The temple was destroyed. The cities were destroyed. A lot of people lost their lives. And a lot of people among our people chose to give up the heritage. It said that there were wicked men among our people who joined with the heathen during this time. And so Matthias rose up during this time when our people were in hardship, and he fought for our people because the armies, the Greek armies oftentimes were used as a means to force our people to do certain things. So they rose up and fought, and the Most High allowed them to prosper and to combat a lot of these nations and peoples that was against our people. And so you had Matthias, and he had sons. He had John, he had Cashti, Tassi, Maccabee, Eleazar, and Jonathan. And when Matthias died, he passed the torch down to Judas Maccabee. And Judas Maccabee was great for our people. He overcame a lot of nations on behalf of our people, and our people prospered under him. The Most High allowed him to prosper in his work. But he died in a war, and at a time when our people were outnumbered, he chose to stay and fight when the other soldiers wanted to retreat. He chose to stay and fight, and he ended up dying in that war. And Jonathan, his brother, took over in his stead. Jonathan did the same thing. He overcame a lot of nations. The Most High used him to defeat a lot of our enemies. And because of that, because he was great in war and a lot of the other people feared him, he was elevated with the other nations. A lot of the other nations wanted to join ranks and make alignments with Jonathan and our people. And they gave him a lot of riches and a lot of favor. And he sort of fell for that. He ended up falling short due to a setup. He made an alignment with Egypt during that time. And there was an ambitious king by the name of Tryphon who rose up and wanted to take over the throne of Alexandrios and the throne of Ptolemy. So he went to Ptolemaeus to fight against him. And on his way, Jonathan and his army, he encountered him. So instead of fighting against him, he persuaded Jonathan to call some of his soldiers to return back. Jonathan did. They threw a banquet for him and ended up assassinating him and his sons and those that were with him. So in his stead, you had, after Jonathan, you had Simon to take over. And Simon was successful. He defended our people as well. But the same thing happened to him. The same fate happened to him. He ended up getting set up, and him and his sons and some of the soldiers that were with him ended up getting assassinated. And so within all of this, when Judas Maccabees was alive, he made an alliance with Rome. He made a friendship with Rome because he heard of Rome and how great Rome was. And so he aligned with Rome, made a friendship with Rome as a means to rid themselves of being under the Greek rulership, the yoke that the Greeks had on them during that time. And so within all of this happening, they still had that alliance with Rome. And now they're at a point where all of the people who stood up on behalf of our people are now slain and dead. And now they're at the point where they don't have a shepherd or a ruler. And so this is where the second chapter comes in, and this is where we're going to pick up. Like I said, for those who haven't looked at the first parts, feel free to go check those out. Like the video as well and subscribe, if you see fit to, and that'll be greatly appreciated. So let me Second Maccabees, the second book of Maccabees. The brethren, the Jews that be at Jerusalem and in the land of Judah, wish unto the brethren, the Jews that are throughout Egypt, health and peace. So you have our people who were in Egypt during that time. Elohim be gracious unto you, and remember his covenant that he made with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, his faithful servants, and give you all an heart to serve him and to do his will with a good courage and a willing mind. And Yahuwah open your hearts to his law, his Torah and commandments, and send you shalom. And Yahuwah hear your prayers and be at one with you and never forsake you in time of trouble. And now we be here praying for you, what time as Demetrios reigned in the 169th year, we the Jews wrote unto you in the extremity of trouble that came upon us in those years, from the time that Yeshua and his company revolted from the Holy Land and kingdom, and burned the porch, and shed innocent blood. Then we prayed unto Yahuwah, and were heard. We offered also sacrifices of fine flour, and lighted the lamps, and set forth the loaves on the table of Yahuwah. And now see that ye keep the feast of Hanukkah, of the altar in the month Kislev, in the 168th year, the people that were at Jerusalem and in Judah, and the council and Yehuda sent greeting and health unto Aristobulus, king of Ptolemais, master, who was of the stock of the anointed priests, and to the Jews that were in Egypt. So once again, you're talking about Jews that were in Egypt during this time, namely Alexander. Insomuch as Yahuwah Elohim hath delivered us from great perils, we thank him highly, as having been in battle against the king. For Yahuwah cast them out that fought within the holy city. For when the leader was come into Paras, and the army with him that seemed invincible, they were slain in the temple of Naniah by the deceit of Naniah's priest. For Antiochus, as though he would marry her, came into the place, and his friends that were with him to receive money in name of dowry. Antiochus, as though he would marry her, came into the place, and his friends that were with him to receive money in the name of a dowry. Now when the priest of Naniah had set forth, and he was entered with a small company into the compass of the temple, they shut the temple as soon as Antiochus was come in, and opening a privy door of the roof, they threw stones like thunderbolts, and struck down the captain, hewed them in pieces, smote off their heads, and cast them to those that were without. Pretty much set up an ambush for him. Thanksgiving and praise be to Yahuwah in all things, who have delivered up the ungodly. Therefore, whereas we are now purposed to keep the feast of Hanukkah of the altar upon the 25th day of the month Kislev, we thought it necessary to certify you thereof, that you also might keep it, as the feast of Sukkot, and of the fire which was given us when Nehemiah offered sacrifice, after that he had builded the temple and the altar. For when our fathers were led into Paras, the priests that were then devout took the fire of the altar privily, and hid it in a hollow place of a pit without water, where they kept it sure, so that the place was unknown to all men. Now, after many days, when it pleased Yahuwah, Nehemiah, being sent from the king of Paras, did send of the posterity of those priests that had hid it to the fire. But when they were told us, they found no fire. When they told us, they found no fire, but thick water. Then commanded he them to draw it up and to bring it. And when the sacrifices of Yahuwah were laid on, Nehemiah commanded the priests to sprinkle the wood and the things laid thereon with the altar. When this was done, and the time came that the sun shone, which before was hid in the cloud, there was a great fire kindled, so that every man marveled. And the priest made a prayer to Yahuwah whilst the sacrifice was consuming. I say, both the priest and all the rest, Jonathan beginning, and the rest answering thereunto, as Nehemiah did. And the prayer was, hold on. Okay, 23, it says, and the priest made a prayer to Yahuwah whilst the sacrifice was consuming. I say, both the priest and all the rest, Jonathan beginning, and the rest answering thereunto, as Nehemiah did. And the prayer was after this manner: O Yahuwah Elohim, creator of all things, who are fearful and strong, and righteous and merciful, and the only and gracious King, Yahuwah the righteous one, who opens his hand wide to all the living, and everlasting, thou that deliverest Israel from all trouble, and didst choose the fathers and sanctify them. Receive the sacrifice for thy whole people Israel, and preserve thine own portion and sanctify it. Gather those together that are scattered from us. Deliver them that serve among the heathen. Look upon them that are despised and abhorred, and let the heathen know that thou art Yahuwah our Elohim. It says, gather those together that are scattered from us. So this is the prayer that they prayed on behalf. They was wanting the restoration of the kingdom then. And this is what all of the brothers that stood up for our people, this is what they represented, the restoration of our kingdom. So this is what they're looking for. It say, punish them that oppress us, and with pride do us wrong. Plant thy people again in thy holy place, as Moses had spoken. And the priest sung psalms of thanksgiving to Yahuwah. Now when the sacrifice was consumed, Nehemiah commanded the water that was left to be poured on the great stones. When this was done, there was kindled a flame, but it was consumed by the light that shined from the altar. So when this matter was known, it was told the king of Paras, Persia, that in the place where the priests that were led away had hid the fire, there appeared water, and that Nehemiah had purified the sacrifices therewith. Then the king, enclosing the place, made it holy after he had tried the matter. And the king took many gifts and bestowed thereof on those whom he would gratify. And Nehemiah called this thing Haftor, which is as much as to say a cleansing, but many men call it Nephtar. It is also found in the records that Jeremiah the prophet commanded them that were carried away to take of the fire as it had been signified, and how that the prophet, having given them the law, charged them not to forget the law of Yahweh, and that they should not err in their minds when they see images of silver and gold with ornaments. I think this is when you read that letter of Jeremiah to the captives of Babylon. And with other such speeches exhorted he them that the law of Yahweh should not depart from their hearts. It was also contained in the same writing that the prophet from the mouth of Yahweh commanded the tabernacle and the ark to go with him, as he went forth into the mountain where Moses climbed up and saw the heritage of Elohim. And when Jeremiah came thither, he found an hollow cave wherein he laid the tabernacle and the ark and the altar of incense, and so stopped the door. And some of those that followed him came to mark the way, but they could not find it. And when Jeremiah perceived, he blamed them, saying, as for that place, it shall be unknown until the time that Yahweh will gather his people again together and receive them unto mercy. So this is dealing with the ark. And they tried to mark the place where he hid it. It says he found an hollow cave wherein he laid the tabernacle and the ark and the altar of incense, and so stopped the door. There's also a portion when you read the Nicodemus. Was it Nicodemus? Yeah, it was Nicodemus. When we read how I'm trying to think, was it Nicodemus? No, it was Baruch. It was in 2nd Baruch. There's a portion in there when Baruch was looking at Babylon coming in, the Chaldeans surrounding the city. And it said the Most High took him up in the spirit. And it said that you had 4 messengers on the 4 corners of the city. He said he saw another angel descending down saying, don't light your torches, because each messenger had a torch. And he said, don't light your torches until I deliver into the earth things the Most High commanded me to. And it said he took the ark, he took the altar, the testimonies, and some other things. I forget exactly, but it said he hid them in the earth and said, earth, hide these things until the consummation of time, so that the heathen may not take hold of them. So this is kind of reflecting that. It says, and when Jeremiah perceived, he blamed them, saying, as for that place, it should be unknown until the time that Yahweh will gather his people again together and receive them unto mercy. Then shall Yahweh show them these things, and the glory of Yahweh shall appear, and the cloud also, as it was showed under Moses. And as when Solomon desired that the place might be honorably sanctified to Yahweh, it was also declared that he, being wise, offered the sacrifice of Hanukkah and of the finishing of the temple of Yahweh. And as when Moses prayed unto Yahweh, the fire came down from heaven and consumed the sacrifices, even so prayed Solomon also, and the fire came down from heaven and consumed the burnt offerings. And Moses said, because the sin offering was not to be eaten, it was consumed. So Solomon kept the sacrifice to Yahuwah those 8 days. The same things also were reported in the writings and commentaries of Nehemiah, and how he, founding a library, gathered together the acts of the kings and the prophets and of David, and the epistles of the kings concerning the holy gifts. So it said that he founded a library. All right, he gathered together the acts of the kings and the prophets and David, and the epistles of the kings concerning the holy gifts. In like manner also Judah gathered together all those things that were lost by reason of the war we had, and they remain with us. So this is another passage in Esdras tells you that, I believe it's 270 something books, I believe, well beyond what people want to lock themselves into now. Wherefore, if ye have need thereof, send some to fetch them unto you, whereas we then are about to celebrate the purification. We have written unto you, and ye shall do well if ye keep the same days. We hope also that Yahuwah our Elohim, that delivered all his people and gave them all an heritage in the kingdom and the priesthood and the sanctuary, as he promised in the law, will shortly have mercy upon us and gather us together out of every land under heaven into the holy place. We hope also that Yahuwah our Elohim, that delivered all his people and gave them all an heritage and kingdom and priesthood and the sanctuary, as he promised in the law, will shortly have mercy upon us and give us and gather us together out of every land under heaven. It's like I said, they wanted the kingdom to be restored then. For he had delivered us out of great troubles and had purified the place. Now, as concerning Judas Maccabee and his brethren, and the purification of the great temple, and the dedication of the altar, and the wars against Antiochus Epiphanes the Magnificent, and Eupator his son, and the manifest signs that came from heaven unto those that behaved themselves manfully to their honor for Judaism, so that, being but a few, they overcame the whole country and chased barbarous multitudes. All right, let me say Yehudism. Let me see something real quick. Second, hold on. It says, yep, in the English version, it says Judaism. It says, and the manifest signs that came from heaven unto those that behaved themselves manfully for their honor for Judaism, so that, being but a few, they overcame the whole country and chased barbarous multitudes. So we obviously know that this is not talking about in the religious sense or the modern sense. It says, and recovered again the temple, renowned all the world over, and freed the city, and upheld the law which were going down, Yahuwah being gracious unto them with all favor. All these things I say, being declared by Yeshua of Qurini in 5 books, we will essay to abridge in 1 volume. For considering the infinite number and the difficulty which they find that desire to look into the narrations of the story, for the variety of the matter, we have been careful that they that will read may have delight, and that they that are desirous to commit to memory might have ease, and that in all into whose hands it comes might have profit. So this was, now this kind of gives us a glimpse into the motive or the intent of the writers, the original writers and authors. All right, it was so that we might have delight. And even when you read in Enoch, it talks about how in the end times people are going to receive books, and they're going to rejoice in these books and be made wise through these books. Basically letting you know that in the end time, the canon is going to be uncovered. More information is going to come out that's going to solidify and strengthen the things that we learn. And people are going to have a delight in these books and this information. Same thing here. It says, and that they that are desirous to commit to memory might have ease. That's why I said not everybody can read, not everybody have a delight or a desirous of looking into these other books. But you see it's so many. He said, considering the infinite number. But therefore to us that have taken upon us this painful labor of abridging, it was not easy, but a matter of sweat and watching. So think about that. It says the painful labor. It said it was not easy, but a matter of sweat and watching. And think about people who disregard these books, say that they garbage and they this and that, and don't realize what it took, what our people had to go through just to inscribe this information so that it could be passed down to us. YouTube should be sued, man. Yeah, I said it on air. Because if y'all about censoring, then how are these bots coming into the chat all the time? I don't care, man. That's on purpose. But look at what it took for us to get this information. All we have to do is read it and be edified. But it said it took painful labor of abridging, and it was not easy, and a matter of sweat and watching, because a lot of these people's lives were on the line for having these records. And you have people of today who take it lightly. Even as it is no ease unto him that prepareth a banquet and seeketh the benefit of others, yet for the pleasing of many we will undertake gladly this great pains, leaving to the author the exact handling of every particular, and laboring to following the rules of an abridgment. So they didn't break no rules. People always talk about scholarship, and they took close care to see to it that all those angles was covered. So, for as the master builder of a new house must care for the whole building, but he that undertaketh to set it out and paint it must seek out fit things for the adoring thereof. Even so I think it is with us. So the same precision, the same care it takes to build a house and decorate it and make it appeasing to where people want to come to that house and live in that house. That's the same care that it took for them to get this information, to stand upon every point and go over things at large, and to be curious in particulars belonging to the first author of the story. But to use brevity and avoid much laboring of the work is to be granted to him that will make an abridgment. Here then will we begin the story, only adding thus much to that which had been said, that is a foolish thing to make a long prelogue, and to be short in the story itself. So in other words, we want to get you the direct information and not a lot of commentary, like how people like to read biblical commentaries. It's basically what he's saying. Long prelogue, that's like a commentary. Now, when the holy city was inhabited with all peace, and the Torah of Yahuwah were kept very well, because the heart of Canaan was whole with Yahuwah our Elohim, and his hatred of wickedness. It came to pass that even the kings themselves did honor the place and magnify the temple of Yahuwah with their best gifts, insomuch that Seliquos of Asia and his own revenues bear all the costs belonging to the service of the sacrifices in the house of Yahuwah. But one Simon of the tribe of Benjamin, who was made governor of the temple, fell out with the high priest about disorder in the city. And when he could not overcome Quona, he gat him to Apolonius, the son of Thraces, who then was governor of Aram and Canaan, and told him that the treasury in Jerusalem was full of infinite sums of money, so that the multitude of their riches, which did not pertain to the account of the sacrifices, was innumerable, and that it was possible to bring all into the king's hand. So he went and basically, it's like somebody being aligned with you. They get mad, then they go tell somebody else about what you have so they can come try to take it. Now, when Apolonius came to the king, he had showed him of the money, whereof he was told the king chose out Heliodorus, his treasurer, and sent him with a commandment to bring him the foresaid money. So forthwith, Heliodorus took his journey under a color of visiting the cities of Aram and Canaan, but indeed to fulfill the king's purpose. And when he was come to Jerusalem, he had been courteously received of the high priest of the city. He told him what intelligence was given of the money, and declared wherefore he came, and asked if these things were so indeed. Then the high priest told him that there was such money laid up for the relief of widows and fatherless children, and that some of it belonged to Tobias, son of Porquinos, a man of great dignity, and not as that wicked Simon had misinformed. The sum whereof in all was 400 talents of silver and 200 of gold, and that it was altogether impossible that such wrongs should be done unto them that had committed it to the holiness of the place and to the majesty and inviolable sanctity of the temple of Yahuwah, honored over all the world. So this was during a time when many rulers in the earth were aware of the sanctuary in Jerusalem, like any other place that's highly renowned. All the kings of the earth honor it, and they wanted to try to take the riches that was in the temple. He said that the priest told him that whatever Simon told you is not true, but it said that these things was laid up for the relief of widows and fatherless children. So think about the system now, how they abuse the system now with Brent Favre, you know. But Heliodorus, because of the king's commandment given him, said that in any wise it must be brought into the king's treasury. So we gotta have it. So at the day which he appointed, he entered in to order this matter. Wherefore there was no small agony throughout the whole city. But the priests, prostrating themselves before the altar of Yahuwah in their priest vestments, called unto Yahuwah upon him that made a Torah concerning things given to be kept, that they should safely be preserved from such as had committed them to be kept. Then whoso had looked the high priest in the face, it would have wounded his heart, for his countenance and the changing of his color declared the inward agony of his mind. And so this is something profound right here. So now that this kind of gives me the impression that these priests had actual power to a degree. It says, then the man who was compassed with fear and horror of the body, that it was manifest to them that looked upon him with what sorrow he had now in his heart. Others ran flocking out of their houses to the general supplication to Yahuwah, because the house of Yahuwah was like to come into the contempt of the heathen. And the women girt with sackcloth under their breasts abounded in the streets, and the virgins that were kept in ran, some to the gates and some to the walls, and others looked out of the windows, all because they trying to come take the wealth of the city, and all holding their hands toward heaven, making supplication to Yahuwah. Then it would have pitied a man to see the falling down of the multitude of all sorts, and the fear of the high priest crying out to Yahuwah for deliverance. They then called upon Yahuwah to keep the things committed of trust safe and sure for those that had committed them. Nevertheless, Heliodorus executed that which was decreed. Now, as he was there present himself with his guard about the treasury, Yahuwah Elohim of spirits caused a great apparition, so that all that presumed to come in with him were astonished at the power of Elohim, and fainted, and were so afraid. An apparition is like a ghostly vision, like how people talk about they see ghosts. That's what an apparition is. So the Most High caused them to see a great apparition, so that all that presumed to come in with him were astonished at the power of Elohim, and fainted, and were so afraid. For there appeared unto them an horse with a terrible rider upon him, and adorned with a very fair covering. And he ran fiercely and smote at Heliodorus with his forefeet, and it seemed that he had sat upon the horse, and it seemed that he that sat upon the horse had complete harness of gold. So this was a vision they saw. They were afraid at this vision. And it says, moreover, 2 other young men appeared before him, notable in strength, excellent in beauty and comely in apparel, who stood by him on either side and scourged him continually and gave him many sore stripes. And Heliodorus fell suddenly unto the ground and was compassed with great darkness. But they that were with him took him up and put him into a litter. Thus him that lately came with a great train and with all his guard into the treasury of Yahuwah, they carried out, being unable to help himself with his weapons. And manifestingly they acknowledged the power of Elohim. So the people cried out and the priests cried out. And because of this, they were able to pretty much summon the Most High and his power on these people. And he forced them to see a vision, and they became incompetent, losing their faculties, falling out because of a vision that he brought on them. So they acknowledged the Most High's power, for he by the hand of Yahuwah was cast down and lay speechless without all hope of life. But they praised Yahuwah that had miraculously honored his own place. For the temple of Yahuwah, with a little afore, was full of fear and trouble. When Yahuwah appeared, was filled with joy and gladness. So the Most High delivered the people from having their things taken away from them, their wealth taken away from them. Then straightways certain of Heliodorus' friends prayed Quonah that he would call upon the presence of Yahuwah to grant him his life, who lay ready to die. So the high priest, suspecting lest the king should misconceive that some treachery had been done to Heliodorus by the Jews, offered a sacrifice for the health of the man. Now, as the high priest was making an atonement, the same young men in the same clothing appeared and stood beside Heliodorus, saying, Give Quonah the high priest great thanks, insomuch as for his sake Yahuwah has granted thee life. So while they seeing this vision, there was two other men that appeared. It said who was strong in might, had on goodly apparel, and were perfect in beauty. And they were scourging him with stripes. And so it was because of the prayer of the high priest that now these same young men in the same clothing and apparel stood beside him, saying, Give thanks to the high priest, because inasmuch as for his sake, because they prayed for you and did a sacrifice for you, the Most High has granted thee life. And seeing that the hand of Yahuwah has scourged thee from heaven, declare unto all men the mighty power of our Elohim. And when they had spoken these words, they appeared no more. So Heliodorus, after he had offered sacrifice unto Yahuwah and made great vows unto him that had saved his life and saluted Quonah, returned with his host to the king. Then testified he to all men the works of the great Yahuwah, which he had seen with his eyes. So he went and told everybody about it. And when King Heliodorus, and when the King Heliodorus, who might be a fit man to be sent yet once again to Jerusalem, he said, If thou hast any enemy or traitor, send him thither, and thou shalt receive him well scourged, if he escape with his life. For in that place, no doubt, there is an especial power of Elohim. This is what the nations recognized then, because we know that Jerusalem is the place where the Most High chose to put his name, his temple and his sanctuary. So he's saying in that place is a special power of the Most High because he witnessed it. It says, For he that dwelleth in heaven hath his eye on that place and defendeth it. and he beat it and destroyed them that come to hurt it. This place he chose to put his name. And the things concerning Heliodorus and the keeping of the treasury fell out on this sort. Then Simon, now of whom we spake afore, having been a betrayer of the money and of his country, slandered Konah as if he had terrified Heliodorus and been the worker of these evils, twisting the story around. He was a betrayer of the money. It says, thus was he bold to call him a traitor that had deserved well of the city and tendered his own nation, and was so zealous of the law of Yahweh. But when their hatred went so far that by one of Simon's factions murders were committed, Konah, seeing the danger of this contention, and that Apolonius, as being the governor of Aram and Canaan, did rage and increase Simon's malice, so he didn't align with them, the governors of Aram and Canaan. He went to the king, not to be an accuser of his countrymen, but seeking the good of all, both public and private. For he saw that it was impossible that the state should continue quiet and Simon leave his folly, unless the king did look thereunto. But after the death of Seleucus, when Antiochus called the Magnificent took the kingdom, Yeshua, the brother of Konah, labored under to be high priest, promising unto the king by intercession 360 talents of silver, and of another revenue 80 talents. Beside this, he promised to assign 150 more, if he might have license to set him up a place of exercise, like it said in the first chapter of First Maccabees, and for the training up of youth in the fashions of the heathen, and to write them of Jerusalem by the name of Antiochus. So he said to set up a place of exercise and for the training up of the youth. That's your little league football teams and basketball teams. But I used to coach basketball, but this is what this is after, the same thing, which when the king had granted and he had gotten into his hand the rule, he forthwith brought his own nation to Greekish fashion. So he turned our people to the Greekish fashion, and the royal privileges granted a special favor to the Jews by the means of Jonathan, the father of Eupolemus, who went ambassador to Rome for amenity and aid. He took away, and putting down the governments which were according to the law of Yahweh, he brought up new customs against the law. For he built gladly a place of exercise under the tower itself, and brought the chief young men under his subjection, and made them wear a hat. Now such was the height of Greek fashions, an increase of heathenish manners, through the exceeding profaneness of Yeshua, that ungodly wretch, and no high priest, that the priest had no courage to serve any more at the altar, but despising the temple and neglecting the sacrifices, hastened to be partakers of the unlawful allowance in the place of exercise, after the game of discus, called them forthwith discus. So this was the game they got into. Not setting by the honors of their fathers, but liking the glory of the Grecians best of all, by reason whereof Yahweh sent sore calamity upon them. For they had them to be their enemies and avengers, whose customs they followed so earnestly, and unto whom they desired to be like in all things. Now check that out. It says, for they had them to be their enemies and avengers, whose customs they followed so earnestly, and unto whom they desired to be like in all things. It's the mindset of a lot of our people now. We want to be like our enemies. We want to mimic them. We want to mimic their customs. And it says they followed so earnestly. For it is not a light thing to do wickedly against the word of Yahweh, but the time following shall declare these things. For it is not a light thing. You know, a lot of people take it lightly, the things in the Most High's word, but it said it's not a light thing. It says, when the game that was used every faith year was kept at Zoar, the king being present, this ungracious Yeshua sent special messengers from Jerusalem, who were Antiochians, to carry 300 drachms of silver to the sacrifice of Hercules, which even the bearers thereof thought fit not to bestow upon the sacrifice, because it was not convenient, but to be reserved for other charges. So they knew this wasn't a good idea, that could have been used for something else, but he sent it by means of a sacrifice to a god that they was worshiping, Hercules. This money then, in regard of the sender, was appointed to Hercules' sacrifice, but because of the bearers thereof, it was employed to the making of galleys. Now when Apollonius, the son of Menestius, was sent into Egypt for the coronation of King Ptolemaeus, Philometor Antiochus, understanding him not to be well affected of his affairs, provided his own safety, whereupon he came to Joppa, and from thence to Jerusalem, where he was honorably received of Yeshua and of the city, and was brought in with torch alight and with great shoutings, and so afterward went with his host unto Canaan. 3 years afterward, Yeshua sent Menelaos, the aforesaid Simon's brother, the same dude who was a traitor to the money, to bear the money unto the king, and to put him in mind of certain necessary matters. But he, being brought to the presence of the king, when he had magnified him for the glorious appearance of his power, got the priesthood to himself. So this dude, Yeshua, wanted the priesthood, but he sent Simon's brother, and when Simon's brother went, he received the priesthood to himself, offering more than Yeshua by 300 talents of silver. So how many, let me see. Sent Menelaos, foresaid brother, to bear money unto the king in certain manners. Okay, so he took Simon's money, and then he added his own money to it and used that as a means to get the priesthood for himself. He said he offered more than Yeshua by 300 talents of silver. So he came to the king's mandate, bringing nothing worthy the high priest, but having the fury of a cruel tyrant and the rage of a savage beast. Then Yeshua, who had undermined his own brother, being undermined by another, was compelled to flee into the country of Ammonim. So Menelaos got the principality. But as for the money that he had promised unto the king, he took no good order for it, albeit Sostrates, the ruler of the castle, required it. For unto him appertained the gathering of the customs, wherefore they were both called before the king. Now Menelaus left his brother Lysimachus in his stead in the priesthood, and Sostratus left Crates, who was governor of the Cyprians. While those things were in doing, they of Tarsus and Melos made insurrection, because they were given to the king's concubine called Antiochus. Then came the king in all haste to appease matters, leaving Andronicus, a man in authority, for his deputy. Now Menelaus, supposing that he had gotten a convenient time, stole certain vessels of gold out of the temple, and gave some of them to Andronicus, and some he sold into Zoar and the cities round about, which when Conah knew of a surety, he reproved him and withdrew himself into a sanctuary at Daphne that lieth by Antioch. Wherefore Menelaus, taking Andronicus apart, prayed him to get to Conah into his hands, who being persuaded thereto, and coming to Conah in deceit, gave him his right hand with oaths, and thought he were suspected by him. Yet persuaded he him to come forth of the sanctuary, whom forthwith he shut up without regard of justice. For the which cause, not only the Jews, but many also of other nations took great indignation, and were much grieved for the unjust murder of the man. So it says, wherefore Menelaus, taking Andronicus apart, prayed him to get Conah into his hands. So they want to kill the high priest, who being persuaded thereunto, and coming to Conah in deceit, gave him his right hand and with oaths. And though he were suspected by him, yet persuaded he him to come forth of the sanctuary, whom forthwith he shut up without regard of justice. For the which cause, not only the Jews, but many also of other nations took great indignation, and were much grieved for the unjust murder of the man. So they murdered the high priest. And when the king was come again from the place of Colliquia, the Jews that were in the city, and certain of the Greeks that abhorred the fact also, complained, because Conah was slain without cause. Therefore Antiochus was heartily sorry, and moved to pity, and wept, because of the sober and modest behavior of him that was dead. And being kindled with anger, forthwith he took away Andronicus, his purple, and rent off his clothes, and leading him through the whole city unto that very place where he had committed impiety against Conah, there slew he the cursed murderer. Thus Yahuwah rewarded him his punishment as he had deserved. Now when many sacrileges had been committed in the city by Lysimachus with the consent of Menelaus, and the fruit thereof was spread abroad, the multitude gathered themselves together against Lysimachus, many vessels of gold being already carried away. Whereupon the common people rising and being filled with rage, Lysimachus armed about 3,000 men, and began first to offer violence. One, Uranus, being the leader, a man far gone in years, and no less in folly. They then, seeing the attempt of Lysimachus, some of them caught stones, some clubs, others taking handfuls of dust that was next at hand, cast them all together upon Lysimachus and those that sent upon them. Thus many of them were wounded, and some they struck to the ground. and all of them they forced to flee. But as for the church robber himself, him they killed beside the treasury. I'm trying to line this up with something. It says, of these matters, therefore, there was an accusation against Menelaus. Now, when the king came to Zoar, 3 men that were sent from the Senate pleaded the cause before him. But Menelaus, being now convicted, promised Talmai, the son of Dorimon, to give him much money if he would pacify the king toward him. Whereupon Talmai, taking the king aside into a certain gallery, as it were to take the air, brought him to be of another mind, insomuch that he discharged Menelaus from the accusations, who notwithstanding was cause of all the mischief. And those poor men who, if they had told their cause, yea, before the Scythians, should have been judged innocent, them he condemned to death. Thus they followed. Hold on one second. It says, thus they that followed the matter of the city, and for the people, and for the holy vessels, did soon suffer unjust punishment. Wherefore even they of Zoar, moved with hatred of that wicked deed, caused them to be honorably buried, so as through the covetousness of them that were of power, Menelaus remained still in authority, increasing in malice, and being a great traitor to the citizens. That'll be where I'm gonna conclude. This is part 1, 2nd Maccabees. This will be where we cut it off for today. The end of chapter 4. Let's see who we got in the chat. Brother Darnell Blackshear, shalom and blessings. Good to see you once again. Unbiased Talk, shalom to you. Good to see you in the chat. We got Pensy Lola, y'all bless, shalom and blessings. Good to see you, sis. We got my love Shibriya, shalom. Good to see you. Sister Linya, shalom. Good to see you once again. As always, got Brother Smitty, shalom and blessings to you, Brother Smitty. Good to see you. Got Sister Sharon O, shalom and blessings. Brother Jason Camphor, shalom and blessings, bro. Sister Nature Graffiti, shalom and blessings. Good to see you once again. Sister Aniana Coleman, shalom and blessings. Good to see you. Sister Omiya Yakita, shalom to you. Miss T. Adams, shalom and blessings. That's about everybody in the chat. I want to thank everybody for joining in to part 1. We'll pick it back up with part 2, chapter 5. Shalom and blessings. All praise, honor, and glory to our Heavenly Father, to His Son, and to His Holy Spirit. See y'all back for part 2. Shalom.